Our next guest this morning, who's Debbie Kinghorn. She's from Bracknell. She's come in to tell us about the set of children's books that she's written with a twist. Debbie's using her experience as a family coach to help children as they face challenges such as dealing with the arrival of a sibling, starting school, facing up to bullying, separation of their parents, and much, much more. Debbie, welcome. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So tell me how you came to write these books, first of all.
Well, the story behind this is that personally, I had a few issues growing up, a few difficult experiences growing up,
Yes.
and I basically spent a lot of my life locking down my emotions. I drew up a massive wall, didn't really want to know people properly, didn't throw myself into things, and was quite nervous, really, in general.
Scared.
Yeah. And I was one of these kids that was great. If you took me to somebody's house, I could always assess who was upset, who was happy. I'd work out the situation straight away because I'd had to. I'd had to learn that quite quickly.
To read things quickly.
Yeah. And anyway, it held me back such a lot. I mean, I got on with my life. I went and got a degree and did various different things and held down some good corporate jobs.
Yeah, high-powered stuff.
But I realised I was completely switched off from the world. I wasn't making connections properly, etc. And then, unfortunately, I found out I had breast cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that sent me into a bit of a plummet, really, about who I was and my life and everything. And one of the things that came out of this was I did some therapy, and B, I learnt about NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming.
Oh, okay.
Does that make more sense?
None at all. I just thought I'd try and sound intelligent for a moment. Neuro-linguistic programming.
So it's basically how we use our brain and our language to influence what we do. So, for example, we tend to have an amazing ability as human beings to take something that might have happened in our past and delete some good information around it, or distort it slightly to be a little worse than it actually was. And then over time, something that could be relatively small has in our head blown up into something that really scares us.
And it's always bad stuff, isn't it?
We tend to do it more with bad than we do good. Although I have to say, I've got a few friends who are, these kind of people who go into exams and come out and they've done so much better than everyone else.
And tell you how much better. Yes. Oh, yes.
So that's distorting in a good way.
Yeah.
So it's basically how our brain cons us really into believing these things. So what we do is we use that to do it backwards, in fact, to actually use good stuff, pull out good information, and use good histories and things that we've learned, and get them to overtake the bad stuff, really.
Right, so
that's how that works.
And so you've gone back to using what you've learned about that with children before they start doing any of that bad stuff.
Exactly. So so what I do is I actually do therapy with families and with children to build confidence and to build connections, to help parents build those connections as well and learn about all this NLP stuff. And in the meantime, I decided to take up a few hobbies. I'd always worked really hard.
Because you weren't busy enough.
Never really done much. And one of those was I started doing some creative writing. And I'd had this idea about feelings and how do they come and go, or do we use them when we want to, or what happens to feelings?
Yes.
And so I created this concept of having this basket, and we keep our feelings in this basket, and then we use them as and when we want to.
Right.
And so the characters from the feelings basket were born, and I started writing books about them.
So what sort of age group are these books aimed at?
So they're aimed between 5 to 8.
Right.
So it's sort of like around key stage 2 reading level. And yeah, for me, absolutely critical time. I think there's a lot of books out there that focus on the younger children. So, arrival of siblings when you're around 2, so picture books and things like that. But not so many when they're a little bit older. And they've got to experience that whole sharing mum and dad thing going on, the whole jealousy that comes with it, and the emotions around that.
So that jealousy over parents, that's a new one that you've just mentioned. How do you mean?
So, for example, if you're sort of 5 or 6, you've had your parents all your life to yourself. You're the star attraction in the household, and then all of a sudden there's a sibling that's going to come along.
Right.
And we've got to cope with 7 years worth of being the star attraction in the house to then becoming another attraction in the house. And so it's how we understand how love can be shared and what jealousy is and what it means. And the little girl in the story goes through all those emotions, and it's how she deals with that.
And what sort of other challenges are children typically in that age group facing?
So we've got starting a new school. For example, a lot of children that I've come across have maybe gone up, changed a school if they've gone up from infants to juniors. A lot of them are primary schools now that are integrated.
Yes.
But some of them have maybe moved house in between time. So they've gone through the challenge of starting school at 4 or 5, which is when, there's a lot of books again about that and a lot of help given around that.
Yes.
But what happens when you have to move school?
Yeah, my son and daughter have had to do that a lot, and they say, and I don't know if you would agree with this, that it can knock them back 2 years in terms of academic achievement and confidence if you move them. That's brutal.
It's harsh. It's harsh. And so this book looks at how to build your confidence beforehand and how confidence can help you and the things that you can do. And each of the books tap into some NLP techniques that children can learn. For example, one of the techniques that we use in the Starting School book is something called anchoring. And that's how you go into a previous really good emotion and remember that and build it up in your head before then you go into whatever the thing is that you're a bit nervous about. And we create anchors to do that.
So these books are actually aimed at the children to teach them techniques that they can do themselves.
Absolutely. They're very much, I wrote them with the intention of books that children can sit down and read with their parents or their teacher.
Right.
So the older ones could take them off and do them themselves, but at the back of each book, I've written some things for parents to then start a discussion with their children. So they've read the book, and then they can go in and say, okay, how did you feel about that? Have you ever had a similar experience to that? And the parents can actually have that conversation with their children and then build on those.
And have you had much chance to assess how effective it is, how big an impact these techniques can have on a child?
Yeah, well, because I do, my company, Emotions in Motion, actually looks after, so I work with children and with parents doing coaching. So yeah, we use these techniques all the time. And I absolutely love it with the little ones and with the older ones.
So that it does sort of bring them out of the shell.
Absolutely, yes. And there's various different techniques that you can use. I've just mentioned one of them, but there's various different techniques that we use to make the brain understand different things and look into the really positive stuff rather than the negative things about a situation.
Debbie Kinghorn, who's brought some books in for children, and these aren't your normal books for children, Debbie. These are books to help them. I'm looking at them now. They're beautiful books, beautifully illustrated, aimed at children. And what do they do?
So the concept of the books is to help children understand what they might be feeling in certain situations. So, for example, one of the books, Brave Beats the Bullies, the little girl in the story, Amy, is being bullied at school. She's taken a toy into school and everyone's laughing at it because it's quite an old-fashioned toy.
Well, kids are so cruel.
Yes, and even her best friend doesn't want to spend time with her anymore because she doesn't want to get involved. And so the concept is about how lonely she feels because she's being bullied. And she goes back the next day thinking that everything's going to be okay, and it's not. The boys are still picking on her and laughing at her.
And that's happened to everybody.
Yes.
Every child out there has to go through that. It's almost a rite of passage, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so the feelings basket helps her because she goes to talk to the feelings basket, and as I said, lonely comes out and helps her understand why she might be feeling that way. And also she feels quite ashamed because she's embarrassed about how she feels and how she's handling it. She starts crying at school and she doesn't quite know how to handle it all. So ashamed decides that it's a good idea if she talks to mum about it. And they work together with Brave to help her learn some strategies as to how to cope when she gets back to school, how she needs to be brave to stand up to the bullies at school. And what's pointed out to her is that, basically the reason that people bully is because they're trying to get some kind of equilibrium. The little boy who started the bullying actually has had a new brother or sister himself.
Yes.
And doesn't like what's going on at home, so he feels there's a disbalance in his life, and what he needs to do is go and pick on someone else to make himself feel better about and life. Unfortunately, Amy's the one that he decides to pick on.
And there is a real need for children to be able to access stuff like this, isn't there? Now, particularly nowadays, it seems, when society's changing so fast. I would imagine this age group that you're going for, the sort of 5 to 8, separating parents is another big issue that you have had to deal with through the books.
It is, and actually that book's due out this month, in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, all being well.
Nice plug.
Yes, so thank you very much. So the concept that we talk about in that is actually written about a little boy whose parents have left, so he also has a feelings basket, and it talks about the anger that he feels with his dad going. He actually feels that his dad's left him.
Yes.
Because children do, they don't understand what's going on with the adults. They can't understand that perspective. To them, the parent is leaving them.
Yes.
And it's the little things as well, Finn talks about who is he going to play football with?
Yes.
What if dad doesn't come back to play football?
Because that's the stuff that matters to children. I've spent a lot of time with military families in another life, but the children there that cope with their dads and mums being away on tours of duty for up to 6 months, they don't get it, do they? And you say, do you miss him? And they go, well, no one plays football with me. No one comes to watch the football. Nobody watched me at my swimming gala. Dad wasn't there. It is those senses of abandonment that lots more children seem to be facing now.
Absolutely. And also, one of the questions that I get quite a lot when I do my coaching and counselling stuff is, what about the other parent? Are they going to go too?
Yes.
That's a big dilemma as well, because you kind of feel like, well, you're left with one and that one's really critical then.
Yes.
And a lot of children have difficulties when parents then try to go out, that the parent that they're staying with needs to go out or to do something. The question then becomes, are they going to come back?
Yeah, well, 4 years on, I'm still not going out. That's the way I've handled it, and I'm sure lots of other mums do the same. How much need do you think there is in the work that you do? You see it every day, but how much need do you think there is for children to be supported by books like yours?
The one thing that I did when I started doing this, it started off as a real hobby, and then I started looking around to see what there was actually out there for children, and there isn't a lot.
No.
And there are some websites that are very supportive, and I follow a lot of those to make sure that I can give those kind of resources to the parents that come to see me. But book-wise and things like that, especially this concept where children can actually look into the issues themselves and learn something themselves along with their parent, there wasn't anything, and I think it's hugely important. Had I have had something like this to help me with my feelings when I was younger, I think I would have been a very different person. I've been lucky that I've found this route as I got older, but I sort of look back and think, what could I have done instead?
Yeah, because it can inhibit activities, joining clubs and things. All these things take confidence, and a lot of kids will miss out, won't they?
Yeah, and it's the one thing that I spend most of my time doing. I do a lot of different therapies with children, but the one thing that I see more than anything is parents come in and say, my child's got no confidence.
Yeah,
and then you look at the situation, something will have happened then, parents splitting up, new sibling, there are various different things, a new school, they've had to move school a few times, various different things, but most of them stem around the child not having confidence.
And you do free web sessions as well, online sessions as well, don't you?
I do, yeah, every other week I do a half-hour webinar that's free for any parents that follow my website, just to come in, and we cover a different topic every couple of weeks, so something that might be of help in different situations. So
Debbie, fantastic, fascinating stuff. Thank you very much for coming in and for bringing
Thank you for having me.
Amy and the Feelings Basket series of books. It's been enlightening, to say the least. Thanks very much.
Thank you.